Welcome to the first ever Salesforce community-led event from Pakistan. My name is Abrar. Today I'm joined by Jafar Ali, sound technical architect, and it's an honor for us to speak at the first ever Salesforce community event from Pakistan. Before we start, I would like to say a big thank you to the organizers, volunteers, speakers, and our special guest, Peter Chitham, for supporting this event by putting their effort and time. Really appreciate it. All right, let us quickly introduce ourselves. So my full name is Mohammad Abrar Haq, but I can just go by Abrar. I've been working on Salesforce for almost over 10 years. And I work as a senior, currently I work as a senior manager and Salesforce technical architect for PwC in the UK practice. And I'm a certified application and system architect, and I'm also a public speaker in Salesforce work.
Hello everyone, my name is Jafar Ali. I've been working on Salesforce for 10 years. Currently, I'm working as a Salesforce architect in the company I started a few years back, Salesforce Creative Solution, and I'm based in Sydney, Australia. We still consider ourselves as a learners in this area. So today we are here to share knowledge, as you say, ideas as a message. And before we begin, one quite famous slide which you have been seeing from different presentation. Just a quick note that please always make your purchasing decision on product and services that are currently available and not what you see here today.
Thanks, Jafar. So this is the agenda for this session. First, we will go and briefly talk about CRM and how it has evolved and what Salesforce platform provides through providing the CRM in Salesforce platform. And of course, we'll talk about then Salesforce implementation and processes and how the different releases actually work together, work in the Salesforce solution. And as an architect, why it's important. And then we will dive into Salesforce solution architecture, layers and building blocks, and considerations that what are the key considerations that we need to consider as an architect, and what are the kind of our lesson learns that we actually made mistakes when we were starting as an architect, and how you could learn from that so you don't make those mistakes again. And then of course we can take a Q&A. Right. So of course, when Salesforce started, it started as a CRM and customer relationship management solution. And historically, of course, you want to have data in one place, so that it's easy to manage your customer relationships. But over time, actually, it's not just a CRM anymore. And Salesforce platform has evolved a lot. Many new features have come up, many new products and system landscape have grown very quickly. And it has many other products now. So and that's where now we always need to now think about customer-centric approach, where even though the data is scattered across different platforms, how can we actually make sure that we can bring that data easily so that we can have a customer 360-degree view, which means that you need to have a CRM that is integrated, even though the different platforms products are within the platform, but data needs to be integrated so that you have a single customer view for your internal Salesforce users and as well as for your customers. And so for that, we need to think about that. How could we have a single view of the customer? And within that, the key other factors that now these days we understand is that how could we make sure that we improve the productivity of our users who are using Salesforce, both for our employees and as well as our customers. And and as an architect, how could we make sure that our solution that we are providing is actually innovative as well? So it actually go with the market trends, and you understand that, and you evolve over time, and you actually try to include those as well in the solution. And of course, we as typical, we have in the CRM that automation is there, optimized processes, and collaboration needs to be simplified, and customer service needs to be proactively approaching to the customers and resolving the issues. And of course, over time, the products have new products have come up where we now need to think about actionable insights and actually actionable dashboards, so that we can see the reports where we can have actions from one place to another easily, rather than having um, uh, weeks to understand and implement the integrations. So now Salesforce platform as CRM itself has evolved. Salesforce platform has evolved as well together. So Salesforce platform is good, and is easy to solutionize, because is on the multi-tenant architecture, which means that its resources are shared. One thing, of course, is cloud-based solution. You don't need to think about hardware and additional IT resources. Why is that? Because you have Salesforce provides a metadata-driven architecture, and it's easy to scale. It's innovate over time, and maintenance wise, it's not that typical system which takes time. It basically automatically maintenance happens. And of course, as known things, that product features are releases 3 times a year. Now, from products point of view, applications that one of the key benefit of Salesforce is basically is secure, and people and customers have trusted on this solution, on this platform. And over time, products have come up, so now you have more trust, and you can easily integrate things on Salesforce, and bring the data from different platforms into Salesforce, and have a customer 360 review. Now, when we talk about implementing Salesforce, now as an architect, of course, there are many different implementation approaches are there. This is just as an example, is that you need to you always consider this, because when you implement that, you need to think about as an architect that what are the when what are my expectations of the customer and client that actually expecting this particular solution, this particular feature of the solution to be implemented and live in the production. So you need to think about what the release process is. And so you have what I call it actually the 4D model, which means that you define first, which means you engage with the stakeholders, you get the high level goals and strategy set, and then of course you go into the further details in the workshops to understand the requirements, and as well as set the scope for either you're talking about a particular release or you're talking about the overall big bang. And then of course then we go into the next phase, which is design. And of course this you can see here as I'm explaining, of course, but this is an iterative approach, which means that you go further, you just keep going, and it's a consistent behavior. So you go into the design, and then of course you think about, okay, what are the on my architecture? Salesforce is one particular product, but the client has already have existing landscape, and on that landscape, Salesforce is just one box. So how could Salesforce be easily integrate, and how could Salesforce can provide options so that other systems which are already present on the landscape can integrate with Salesforce? So you understand that. And of course, we go into the further into develop, where we build and test and do the proper release management from one man to another and to production. And of course, we do the production go live. And of course, after that, we have production go live support and everything. So this this as an architect, you consider that always, because whenever a new requirement or new feature needs to be built, you need to understand, oh really, okay, what are our release management processes are there, how could we set the right expectations so that it doesn't interfere the existing implementation that we're trying to do. Now, if we, if even, let's say if we are not even architects, so if we want to, to be an architect, aspiring architect, what are the things that we should be thinking from a high level point of view, not even just like Salesforce perspective? Um, so in our experience, uh, you know, first thing definitely we have seen is actually the scalability. How could we make sure that the solution that we are providing, it actually works for one record, but at the same time it works for few hundreds and few millions, so that, and if there are issues, how could we make sure that we are addressing that rightly at the right time? So scalability is definitely. Performance is another thing, where if you are implementing just in an internal Salesforce, and you internal Salesforce for employees, you have some complex processes there. Definitely, you need to think about performance, and definitely if you're implementing Experience Cloud, that's for sure you need to think about, because if the customer base is in millions, then the performance is definitely is a thing to actually consider, and of course security as well. That overall, how Salesforce, if you are integrating with Salesforce with other external systems, how could we make sure that the data passed and reside is actually secure, and there is no hijack happened, and also innovation, as I mentioned earlier, that innovation is definitely the key. We need to understand with the market trends, how the market is going with that particular industry or that particular solution. How could we include other new release features? And then, of course, as I mentioned, Salesforce is just one box within the whole enterprise architecture landscape. So how could we make sure that it's actually we can have this in the enterprise architecture at the same time, with all considerations and stakeholders on the same page, that the solution will work and integrate with successfully with all other systems. Now, these are, of course, these are different building blocks that that you know more or less you involved with whenever you think about architecture within Salesforce. Of course, like you think about, okay, how am I going to actually do the application design? Either it requires declarative features, how much of percentage of declarative features will be required, and how much of programmatic. And if it's programmatic, what are we talking about? Are we talking about customer screens? Are we talking about just Apex? Are we talking about integrations with the external systems? How do we make sure that actually scale as well? And sharing and visibility and security. Salesforce platform also automatically, by default provides you, when you have that, single sign-on capability. You have OpenID Connect. Using that, you can have customers to sign in through that into Salesforce Experience Cloud. So how could we make sure that that's also part of it? And of course, there are other factors such as your licensing options. Are we making sure that the licenses we are choosing is actually, and we're suggesting, is actually the right one? For example, if we are talking about customer community, if you don't really need to worry about reports and dashboards, are we okay with that? Or do we really need to think about customer community plus license, or when are we going to use partner community license? So we really need to use partner community license, even though it's a B2B model. So those are the kind of factors that you take as these different building blocks, and then you think about when you architecture or high level architecture before you go into the next phase, from discovery to the implementation. And of course, like big part is DevOps, release management. How do we make sure that we are suggesting the solution? Either that solution is, let's say it's an agile approach, but that approach, how do we make sure that DevOps and release management will put in place rightly from day one, so that we don't need to worry about later, oh, okay, this tool is not working or this process is not working? How do we quickly make sure that we are enabling sandboxes for our customers. So all those considerations, yeah, we need to think about. And of course, from a compliance point of view and from a security point of view as well, we need to think about, okay, auditing. How do we do auditing? How do we do data backup? How do we do encryption? Do we really need to do shield preform encryption, or are we okay with the classic encryption? So those are the kind of considerations that you need to consider as well. And of course, in parallel with that, you also need to think about, always, as implementation is going on, you engage with your stakeholders. You have design authorities there. You have an overall data governance model there, where you talk about upcoming features, how we make sure that there's no issues on the existing issues and the existing implementation. And of course, these days, like, we are also seeing that the requirements are coming into our solutions, mostly now in every stage of the implementation, where customers are keen to actually use intelligence on the solution. So artificial intelligence on the solution. Are we okay to use Einstein, for example, Einstein language, or Einstein image processing? Would that actually, that solution mature enough to handle that? The customer base, the records that we are, data volume that we are taking. So that's also part of your consideration as an architect.
Right. Thanks, Abrar. So there are some key factor which you need to consider. And that key factor, if you do it, then it will really help to drive the architecture discussion with the stakeholder and give them more comfort that what you are doing actually it's going into the right direction. So the key factor first, what Abrar also explained, it's about Salesforce. Where do you think that where you are going to put Salesforce in the system landscape, and what problem it is actually going to solve? And the second one is about data models. When you are how would your data model look like, and and what are the Salesforce limits which Salesforce has, and based on the business scenarios what you are able to see, either you think that the Salesforce is the right solution, and if Salesforce is the right solution, then how you are going to handle those. So if regarding reporting perspective, there will be few reporting requirement as well which you need to think about, because from data model has impact, or reporting has impact on data model. If there are few key requirement which based on data model which you can't be able to do it, then you need to think about some other possible solutions as well. And then you have to think about that either what would be your approach. Either you are going to, most of the requirements will be implemented with point and click tools, or you need programming tools. So whatever is decided, then actually whatever is decided, either it's a programming tool or it is point and click, there will be some specific reason for that, and it might be actually a mix of both tools as well. But there are some other environment related constraints which are dependent on that, because there are few Salesforce org where you can't do and where you can't write any code. So you need to think about from that aspect as well. Other is like what how you are going to, if you're writing Apex or Aura component or LWC, what will be the approach, or what would be the best practices what you are going to implement. And again, from the data migration perspective, when if there is a large amount of data is going to be migrated on an object, you need to think about different aspects from the relationship perspective, that either data model has a right relationship, and for example there is no there is no when the data will be too much, there won't be any scenarios for lookup skew or any other problem. um, Other important good practice, actually, what I would say is design decision logs, which you can maintain. So if as part of any, if you're taking a decision, you can maintain that why you have taken the decision, because requirements change often. And for example, the requirement what you have in day one, it won't be the same requirement after 20 days or after maybe 1 year. So if you have a log, it will really help you to understand why this decision has been taken. Other is about integration. So before starting the project, you need to think about the possible integration, how you can integrate, what will be the approach. Either you're going to use any specific middleware for that, or what will be the approach for that. And the last thing is license here. You need to be aware what are the available license you have, or what more licenses you might be required when this project is going to be going live. So as an architect, you always have to understand the high level picture. So before starting documenting, it's always good practice to think about from high level perspective about the landscape of your of about the system landscape, that where Salesforce or where the application is going to be working, and how it's going to solve the problem. So this is just a high level example what we have made to explain that in the typical example, how the landscape diagram should look like, where you will see that users are interacting on sales and service cloud, and there are some external users who are integrating with experience cloud as well. There might be different identity management solutions in place. So based on that, that diagram might be changed. And as we have specified here, MuleSoft as a integration interface between SAP and databases, what are there. And from data migration perspective, there might be different approach for data migration which you need to think about. For example, if there are millions of record, so migrating from CSV might not be a good option, or if there is a lot of transformation is required, then there would be a need to migrate that data first, transform data into some databases, and from databases then it needs to be migrated to Salesforce application by using different available tools. And app exchange app, which is quite key. Lot of times when you have a requirement, you will find out that in app exchange that product is already implemented. So instead of spending too much money building that product and again using it, it is wise decision to consider app exchange app as well before you start actually proposing or proposing to implement a new product. Okay, so here we have explained the one data model from high level perspective. It will just give you some overview that what are the key elements what you need to think about. So as you will see on the right side, what we have mentioned that there are some master data relationship, lookup relationship, and there are some other consideration as well, which is org wide default reports and what will be the data volume. So all those elements have impact on the data model. So this data model is just a sample data model what we have built, just to give an overview. For example, if a student is trying to enroll in a particular course, and the student is paying different amount on different courses as well, so it will look like that. And based on the more precise requirement, it would have impact on data model. So for example, org wide default, you need to think about that what would be the I mean, if it is master data relationship, then or quite default it will be considering from the parent. And again, from the reports perspective as well, that what report we want to achieve from that data model, because based on again report, data model might be impacted as well. And data volume, there might be like millions of record in one object, so we need to consider it very carefully to make sure that all reports around that which are on that object are like filtered report, and these are filtered on the on index field as well. So from the performance perspective, it will be pretty fast. So as Salesforce is multi has multi-tenant architecture, obviously it comes with different limit as well. So it's always a recommended approach, and it's like it is one of the key component to think about the limits in more detail before the project is started. So in the project, in that phase, we need to think about from the Salesforce contract perspective, because there are different features which you will get based on the Salesforce contract, and there are some platform limit which you can't extend. So all those elements need to be properly analyzed, and then you can actually in a better position to propose that how the solution would look like. Either it is data file storage licenses or API limit or any other governor limits as well. So so um, as an architect, if we don't understand why we are doing it, then we won't be able to convince our stakeholders. So that's why is really really important. So when the solution is proposed, then before proposing the solution, if architect knows that okay, this is the pain point, this is the problem, then it's mean the solution what he is going to what architect is going to propose will cover that problem and will be able to solve that problem. Because most of the time, I mean, it's not necessary that the problem would have like very with complex problem would have a very complex solution. So sometimes complex problem would have very easy solution. So if architect is in that is understanding the reason that why we are doing it, then it's he will be in a position to design scalable and optimized solution.
Thanks, Shafir. I think there is a question there, so I just wanted to take that question because as you are on this slide, the question is that how we can set everything as scalable. What will help us to take that decision? For example, data will be growing every time.
Um, so the key factor is I would like to give some example. So for example, let's take an example of let's say freight management solution where there are a lot of transaction happening for each of the order. So you know that that object would have massive records. So if you have massive records, then it's mean you need to be I mean, every time you have to be careful when you are building let's say reports, or when you are building any actually when you're building anything on that object, you need to think about that proper index are used in your filter. So it's mean when there are too many records in that, and then it won't give you any issue. And the second thing is that whatever, when you know that these are like high volume objects, then there are different practices as well. So for example, when there is any relationship with other object, you need to think about if I change the owner in that object, then what will be the impact, how it will that will take more time, because at the because Salesforce also has some specific rules when those parameters are changed, when then Salesforce start recalculating some other stuff as well. So these are the things I think we need to be conscious of.
Yeah, I think so. Um, I think that scalability, not just going straight away into that detail as well, because when you are implementing your high level architecture and you are actually bringing other stakeholders within the client engagement, that's where this discussion is also very important as well. So I'll give you an example, which is a real life example, and of course, I don't want to mention a client. Is that it's a it's a the customer base is very high. As we're talking about almost like 2 million customers, and those customers will be accessing the customer community, the Experience Cloud, and we are using customer community license. But license doesn't really at the moment matter. What matters is number 2 million. Um, so and that community is really purely custom community using Lightning Web Components, and on top of that we have another complexity as well. From we are not using the standard Salesforce design system, we are using something else. So we are so so that we whenever we are implementing that community, of course they are also using Service Cloud as well. um, and because Service Cloud users are almost like 2 to 3 thousand users there. So for the customer community, we are making sure, as I mentioned earlier, around security is number one thing, because the data is really important. It's a compliance data. Second is and also the GDPR data. Second thing is the performance itself. So scalability will come, but performance first. That even the users are, if for example the users are not able to even load the page, that's a problem. So scalability will come even later. So that performance issue, and then basically the scalability, and of course like data will grow. There's no doubt data will grow, but we need to, every time when the requirement comes in, we need to understand, and we need to validate every time the requirement comes in, which we think that's going to actually impact. So we always need to go back and reiterate that process to see, okay, what's the current architecture, and what are the benchmarks. So of course every solution is not a solution. There is no solution that will take unlimited features. So you need to have some you will have some benchmarks, or you will set some benchmarks, because that's where the Salesforce platform limitations will come up. So that those benchmarks will have with you, and then when the requirement comes in, you need to validate that, and that's where we explicitly mentioned around design design decision logs. So when you implement that moment, maybe that problem is not a problem, but maybe after 6 months that may become a problem, because you now have a large customer base. Now you have more features. Now many deployments are happening quickly, fast, after every 4 weeks. Now all these factors need to be considered, to think about and consider and suggest that the right solution. So for example, if we are thinking about passing the some data to and that data is very large volume data, and passing to the MuleSoft, can we do something else? Can we do something, another approach? I don't know, something like platform events, or another approach, or the files are getting uploaded through customer community, and that file size is too large and we are unable to process, and there is a requirement that we don't want to store that file within Salesforce. So there will be many factors. So not just like the data itself, but also the feature, the functionality itself matters a lot. So we need to then have a trade-offs, and that's why architects, as an architect, you need to have trade-offs. You need to give them pros and cons of each solution, and then agree with the client engagement that which solution we are taking it and why we are taking it, so that tracks in your design decision log. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Abrar. So on this one, we'll quickly discuss about one use case, a very a sample use case what we have built. It's like there's a dream house Salesforce application. The dream house has been using Salesforce for a few years to manage its sales cycle. It has recently acquired Acme Corporation to enhance their existing business. So the key requirement, what's mentioned here, is that all users of Acme should start using the Salesforce application designed for Dreamhouse. Existing data used by Acme should be migrated into Dreamhouse Salesforce app. So there are two key requirements when Dreamhouse, which is one company which I think Trail had built it. So they have acquired one company called Acme, and they have like key requirements here what I have mentioned. So, as an architect, we need to think about that. What are the key factors when we are want? What are the key factors will come when we will actually start considering that requirement? Okay. So the first one is so Abrar, if you press one more enter. So first one is business process mapping. So that is like that is key element when you know that okay, some one company has acquired another company. It's mean that the business process won't be same now. Other company might be using some other business process, so it's mean you need to consider actually how the business process is going to map. What are the changes what you need to do, or actually that based on the client engagement you need to do, you need to take different actions there. Second key important second key point is impact. You have to analyze the impact. If one organization is acquiring another organization, then it's mean when those users are start going to use it, or when the business process is going to change in Dreamhouse org, then it's mean existing application would have some implication. It might be around scalability as well. What, for example, there is a previously based on the agreed requirement, or based on the benchmark what we agreed earlier. There might be one object where we were thinking that this there will be less number of records there, but now there are a lot of records are coming and it is used in a different way. So there will be some impact as well which needs to be analyzed. And third key factor here is change management. So whenever there are so it's mean that because different users are going to use it, there will be a process of change management which needs to be started. Other key factor is Salesforce licenses which needs to be extended, and there might be some features which are not supported, which you are building in the new building for the new Acme company. Then you need to actually acquire more licenses or change different features on the license. So again, that part normally takes some time. Other key factor is data management. So when the new data is going to come, then you need to think about that how this data is going to be managed, how data is going to be migrated there. And there will be some other key factors as well. So for example, the other key point is external reference of data. So it's mean when the data is migrated, you need to make sure that external references are there on the Dreamhouse app. So let's take an example of order. If orders are migrated from Acme org into Dreamhouse org, then it's mean or each order should have some external key or some external reference to the system where it's migrating. So we need to make sure that system has that capability to capture that external reference, which will help down the line when the data is migrated, when business users start checking something or start using it, they will be able to track it back if there is any problem. So Abrar, now you have to press 2 enter so the other will come. Okay, so thanks. So other one is enable disable code. So that's like one of the factor what you need to consider when data management, when the data is migrated. So you need to think about that someone, or you need to just initiate that discussion that we need to build some pattern. So a particular code or process builder or it or triggers, it can be disabled during the data migration by using some configuration setting. So there are some quite good patterns which are already available. Yeah, last we would really like to thanks to everyone who have attended this session, and we would also like to thanks to I would like to thanks to Abrar as well, and to our moderator Badar. So thank you everyone. If you have any question, please post.
Yes, Jafar, we have one more. How can we build rollback strategy while working on enterprise application?
So rollback, Abrar, what I would like to answer first, and then you can go ahead. So quick answer, what I think that rollback strategy, there might be multiple. There are few tools which are already available. Actually, what I'm aware of. And in addition, rollback, if we are talking about, I'm assuming we are not talking about the deployment rollback, because it is also one of the feature what few products also now providing. It's mean when the deployment, you deploy anything there in the new org, you can actually roll back. So if it's about data, then there are some tools which provide backup, and then the strategy can be actually defined based on that.
Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, I think if we let me add a little bit quickly more complexity into that question. So I think let's say if we are not just are we talking about um, building a normal, unmanaged package, our own code, uh, that that is, yeah, definitely a difficult thing. But on top of that, if we also have App Exchange app, a managed package into our solution, then actually it adds more complexity you because App Exchange managed packages have their own versions. So you need to go back to the previous version, and that has its own kind of pros and cons and everything. So um, from a rollback code point of view, just on the managed package side, yes, I think as Jafar mentioned, there might be products available in the App Exchange that actually does that. I was involved in few years back in that, and where we were building purely custom solution on the platform using using purely other technologies, and also the managed package was there, actually building the managed package and also some unmanaged code as well. So it was not that seamless experience, I would say. So we had to had few considerations around that. But I think for a rollback strategy, if you consider that from day one, that might be easier. But if you consider during the implementation or after a few go lives, then it might be a little bit difficult to do that. But it definitely is not impossible, but it's definitely has trade-offs and pros and cons on that. Okay, there is another question. In orgs that have bulk data, particularly millions of records, do you recommend building multiple components in those orgs because the component will have performance issues? Should we limit those? Well, if you're talking about components, I presume you're talking about like normal, like custom components, Lightning Web components or Aurora components. And if so, well, limiting records might not be straight away the first solution. I think the first solution should be that what actually we are trying to bring into that component. Are we trying to bring a particular number of records from a particular customer, or are we trying to bring all the customers and their related records, or similar kind of requirement? So first solution should be that we understand what requirement is, and can we filter out those using requirements, using some attributes. Second would be that can we have a benchmark, and then third would be that whether we can have, and third would be that we can have some, can we have another approach, maybe out of the box thinking. For example, why are we doing this in Salesforce? Can we have, if the data present in somewhere else, can we bring that data through other uh, other channels, and then have that, let's say for example Salesforce Connect, or um, uh, other ways that we can actually do that. So I will not straight away go to the limiting option actually. So that would be my take on that. Jafar, yourself?
Well, yeah, I think you have covered it, so I don't have anything else.
Thanks. Okay. Any other question? Okay. Great. I will let Badr or Kuratan to. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Abrar and Jafar, for joining us today and for such an insightful session. Um, it was really helpful for me, so I'm sure it was really helpful for the rest of the audience as well. So,